Hey,
Hello, how are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm
Hello.
excited for our conversation.
I am too. I'm really excited. I'm so happy to see everyone joining.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. Hi. We'll be starting shortly.
Okay,
Just waiting
perfect.
on one other person to join. Invite again.
How are y'all doing today?
I'm good. I'm here listening to Patience by Dream Girls. I thought that was very fitting
Oh,
for the occasion tonight. I thought that was a great song to kind of start us off. I'll play some of it for you all to hear. So I thought this was a great song because it just talks about, how we have to be patient. We know the change is going to come someday, but oh, there we go. Everyone is on now. Awesome. Hi,
yeah.
Amira. Happy to have you.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to start out by introducing myself and then I'll turn it on over to you all. So, good evening, everyone. I am Ramona Plummer. I'm one of the amazing coordinators here at Our Minds Matter. I am so excited to be here tonight with you all. We're going to have some great discussion around generational trauma and some ways that we can heal. We do want to take note that this topic that we'll be exploring tonight, it can be triggering for some members of the audience. So we do encourage you to be mindful of your needs throughout this conversation and do whatever it is that you need to do to care for yourself. So that means that if you need to step away or disengage at any part of the conversation, please feel free to do so. If you're experiencing a crisis, you can text MIND to 741-741 to speak with a trained counselor from Crisis Text Line for mental support. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to give a little bit of context around why it is important to talk about generational trauma, but specifically within the Black community. So, in recent years, there has been a growing body of research that has shown that historical trauma experienced by our ancestors, it can be passed down from one generation to the next. And this concept is known as intergenerational trauma. So you've probably heard other variations of the term, such as historical trauma, multi-generational trauma, ancestral wounds, etc. Black people in particular are extremely vulnerable to intergenerational trauma due to legacies of slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, and oppression that is still present today in the forms of police brutality, mass incarceration, and much more. Because of this, our goal tonight is to shed light on what integrational trauma looks like in our day-to-day lives, what it looks like in our relationships with ourselves, in our relationships with other people, and also the world around us. We want to see, like, are there patterns? Are these patterns more breakable because we have more resources than our parents, our grandparents, and also our great grandparents? More than anything, we really hope that this discussion will inspire our Black youths to pause, reflect, and start having the conversation within our own spheres. With that being said, let's dive right in, and we are going to hear from our amazing panelists about the ways that they navigate generational trauma and healing. So we can go ahead and get started with Jason.
Hey, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Jason Phillips. I'm one of the subject matter experts for the amazing AAKOMA project, and just very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Amira.
Hi, I'm Amira. I am currently 16 years old, a junior in high school, and living out in the Atlanta area. I'm here repping Team AAKOMA. We are a group of young POC people who are really just trying to spread more awareness about Black mental health and other POC mental health.
Awesome. Thank you, Iman.
Hi, I'm Iman Muhammad. I'm a 17-year-old senior. I'm from the Columbus, Ohio area, and I'm a member of the Our Minds Matter Teen Advisory Council.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are so excited to have you all on our call. Super excited for this conversation. I see some people in the comments shouting you out. Hashtag Team AAKOMA, represent, represent. We're so excited. So let's go ahead and feel free to answer in any order. Feel free to bounce off of each other. Let's do popcorn style. So the first question is, how is trauma transmitted throughout generations? How do you see generational trauma showing up in your own lives?
I was going to let the ladies go first. But I'll start off and say that I see intergenerational trauma being being passed down through generations through us not really having safety and trust within each other. And when our parents or our caregivers, when they don't trust the world or they don't trust certain people or certain groups of people, the way they parent comes down to us. So now we don't trust, not because of our own experiences, but because of the experiences that our parents have had, and they tell us these things. So I'll give a quick example. When I was growing up, my parents always told me, hey, when you go to the store, you need to do this, behave this way, make sure you always get a receipt, get a bag. And it made me really anxious about even going to the store because they wanted to make sure that nobody thought I was stealing. Now, I wasn't a thief, but because of past experiences, my parents made sure that nobody should be accusing you of anything. And that was a safety and a trust issue that was passed down to me.
I think that is such a great answer, and I can honestly relate. Just yesterday, I went to Five Below. I bought a charger. It was $5 charger, and I'm like, oh, I accidentally hit no receipt, and I was beating myself up because I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Now the charger isn't working. I need to return it, and because of how, like you said, that trauma, I'm like, man, what if they think that I stole the charger because I don't have that receipt to prove that I actually came here and purchased it? So that is such a great answer, and I truly can relate with you. Iman, Amira.
I definitely see trauma being transferred through like how media is so prevalent in our lives, especially when in 2020 there was all of the like awareness going around and like everybody sharing all the different stories about different people who had been like murdered by the cops, and it was just like, for me, like I live in a pretty well-off area. That doesn't happen too much around where I live. But that summer, I specifically remember becoming so aware that like I saw my anxiety rise, and it's really transferred through everything, like all the stories. It could be nowhere near me, but then it's like the what if I'm this place? What if I was there? Because everybody has a different experience, but we can experience the same thing, just in different forms.
Thank you.
I completely agree. And I know that just when I was younger, something my parents always taught me is to be very, very careful, very, very careful of how I present myself. Just to always try to be as non-threatening as possible. And just already being Black, that's what is threatening about me. Like, yeah. And just, I know, like, I have brothers, and I just know my parents always tell my brothers to just be very careful. And like, especially with things like police brutality that happen. I also live in a somewhat white area, and my parents just always tell us to be very careful when driving, or if we ever happen to get pulled over, to just always make sure you are as non-threatening as possible.
Thank you, Iman. I can I can totally relate. I have a younger brother as well. And just having those conversations with him at such a young and tender age, it's so difficult. It's so hard. But even within our own healing, making sure that I'm getting rid of that stigma that Black men cannot have feelings, that they have to be strong, that they can't talk about it, and having those conversations with him. Because, like you said, we have a target on our back, especially Black men. So trying to get him to understand that it's okay to feel, it's okay to ask questions. Even just the other day, he was talking about, here we are again having these movements because of police brutality. Weren't we just doing this with George Floyd? And he's 11. So for him to see that it's a problem at such a young age, we clearly have a lot of work to do. So I thank you for that. You touched on something that was very important, your parents letting you know that you have to present yourself in a certain way. Do you feel, and anybody can answer this question, we have a motto at Our Minds Matter: feel free to pass, let it happen, keep it going. So if you don't want to, it's okay. But I'm just wondering, do you feel like that has impacted any of your relationships, this intergenerational, trauma?
I definitely feel like that has affected me, especially in my younger years, because I live in a very diverse area. I was always a little bit more aware of my surroundings than my friends were. Like, I would always be a little bit more well dressed, especially at like school functions, to be like taken more seriously. Or like when we were out, I would always be the person like reining everybody in to calm down, because I didn't want to be the one to like get in trouble or like get thrown out of a place, because that's just something that wasn't on their mind. That specifically happens to Black people continuously throughout our lives, no matter where we live.
Big answer. Anybody like to add on to that? It was well
I'll,
said.
yeah. Just to add from a different perspective, it's definitely showing up in my relationships with my peers, because kind of piggybacking off of Amira, there are times where we're overthinking situations. And like, I'll give another example. So I'm from Detroit, and in Detroit, there's a lot of just trauma that I've encountered as a youth. And when I visit some of my friends who lived in the suburbs, they would kind of laugh at me as, I would be aware of my surroundings, a little bit more vigilant. And I would use the club on my car, so I didn't want my car stolen or broken into. And they was thinking like, Jay, you don't have to do that. What do we don't use this here. But they did not have the same experiences that I had growing up. So for them, what I was doing was kind of doing too much or doing the most. But really, this was a sign for me to keep myself safe.
Mm-hmm.
It impacted the relationships. I had to let them know, like, look, we grew up in totally different neighborhoods, different environments. And it was a conversation, but for me, it was real life.
Mm-hmm. And that's so, like, it's the little things, like you said, just going into a place and being aware of your surroundings. When I go somewhere, I'm like, okay, where's the exit? I don't like my back being to people. I need to be able to look forward. Even when I park my car, I back in. So that way, when it's time to go, I can just pull right out, because you just never know what type of situations you might be placed in. So I thank you. Thank you for that answer. Iman, would you like to add on?
I can't
No
think of
worries,
anything.
no worries, no worries at all. So now, my question for everyone or whoever would like to share is, how have you felt misunderstood or judged by the people in your family, if you have? If not, it's okay.
Um, Personally, I feel like in my family, there's just a really big misunderstanding between the parents and the children, because we grew up in very different ways. And it's kind of just, we grew up in different times, just period. And I think a lot of the time, my parents just kind of are like, what are you complaining about? Because we live in I know like my parents personally are immigrants from Africa, and like their accents and like things have gotten them denied jobs. Like I know, like I think in like the 90s when my mom first came here, she literally had to take off her headscarf because it just didn't fit whatever jobs she was applying to, I guess. And I feel like now when she sees that I am able to wear my hijab to school, and like it doesn't really impact me kind of on the day to day, and it doesn't like to what she sees affecting me. It's just kind of, what are you complaining about when you do complain?
Mm-hmm. I can relate. I have immigrant Jamaican parents, and I have that issue as well. Even the littlest thing, I feel like, oh, I can't slip up, because you have this anxiety around, they came here to give me an opportunity. They came here to give me a better life, and when I'm struggling because they didn't have those struggles in Jamaica, it kind of created like this discourse, because as a parent, you don't know how to help your child go through something because you didn't have to go through it. And those were some of the things that I had to deal with. So I understand.
Yeah. I'll add to that. You know, I have a hair example too. So right now my hair is shorter, but growing up I had braids, and then early adulthood I had locks. So when I had braids in high school, you know, my family, my grandmother, she kind of got used to it. But then I cut it, you know, had like 360s and short hair. So everybody liked the clean cut. But then I went to grow my hair back out. But this time I had locks. And, you know, when you in the in-between stage, it's like, it's not as neat and clear cut. And I could tell my grandmother, she wasn't a fan of it at first. So when you talked about being judged, because she wanted a perception of me to be, you know, always pretty clean cut, well groomed. And even though I was keeping myself up, it wasn't to her standard. But I think that was because of her perception of how I should look, or how men should look at all times. And it really impacted me for a bit. You know, I had to think, do I follow what my grandmother wants me to do, or do I listen to myself? And ultimately, I kept my locks, and then she started to like it. But that was something where I did feel judged. And it was a, you know, not so great feeling, especially in the moment.
Thank you. Amira?
I really don't feel like I was judged. I feel like my parents did a lot of the work that most people my age are doing now. They've always been really understanding. I mean, we have our little things here or there, but, you know, they're very understanding people.
That is really good, and I love to hear that. I really do. I really do. So let's transition into the next question. So based on your professional or personal experience, how are school communities affected by generational and ancestral trauma?
I would say, you know, when it comes to school communities, just growing up, there's a lack of us wanting to be ourselves, and not really wanting to commune with other people, and being passed down. We're more out for self. The communities and the schools, they're not the same, because we're not as trusting of each other. We're wondering, does this person have an angle on me, or can I really open up to them, or will it be used against me? And I see that permeated throughout our teens, and even in the report that AAKOMA Project has done, where the stats are showing that over 50% of the teens are expressing moderate to severe anxiety. And you have to think, you know, where is this anxiety coming from, especially at such a young age?
Right. That's a great answer. It's almost like that crabs in a barrel mentality. And we're all trying to win. We're all trying to be successful. But like you said, because that trust is not there, everyone just feels like everyone's out to get them. It's this dog eat dog world. And it just doesn't have to be that way. Iman, Amira.
I think schools, from what I have seen, are not at all equipped to handle generational trauma. I mean, I know personally in my own school, we have our school counselors are assigned by last name, and I'm lucky enough to have the one Black counselor, but I can't even imagine, like, for Black students who don't have my counselor. I feel like you can't even, like, who do you talk to when, what support do you have, you know?
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I want to follow up about, you know, trauma in the school. So when I was in middle school and elementary, I remember having African American studies classes, and they specifically taught us about our history and about our culture, which now I don't hear that from our youth. I don't hear that being taught in the schools, and we know what's going on in our school systems. And when this not being taught at home, or more so in school where you spend a lot of your time, how can you really raise the consciousness and be aware of what our forefathers have been through if we're not talking about it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a comment that just said a lot of schools they perpetuate the trauma as well. It Something just popped in my mind as you all were speaking. Even when I see schools that have like these metal detectors that these students have to walk into, I don't really think they truly understand how much that feels like you're in a jail when you're walking into these schools. You have some buildings that don't even have windows for students to look out of. It very much so feels as if though, like I said, you're in a jail. So like that comment, I agree. A lot of these schools really do perpetuate the trauma onto us, and they don't realize what they're doing to us. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. School to prison pipeline.
And you feels like I had someone tell me just last week, he switched schools and he pulled it up and he showed me, he said, look at my old school. He said, that looks like a prison. And his new school looked like a university. Oh, you're exactly right.
Yes, the police officers too. We've made it very clear how we don't trust police officers, how we're seeing it because of police brutality, and these schools are being filled with police. And while it's supposed to be that police officers are supposed to protect us, as we have seen in the world, that is not always the case. So that can cause students to have some anxiety whenever they're around police officers. So thank you all for sharing in the chat. I really appreciate it. So now let's switch things up a bit and let's talk about how you all would define healing. How do we move past this trauma?
I think that healing is very necessary, and it can vary from person to person, whether that be like cutting off the people in your life who have perpetuated trauma or just haven't been good for your being specifically, or if it's just learning more about and accepting what happened and then learning to move forward, whether it be through therapy or some kind of journaling. There are different things that everybody can do, and it's a really to each their own system rather than just one solid definition.
Great answer. Thank you.
Iman, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. I think I would define healing just exactly like Amira said, just kind of just trying to break the cycle and just make sure that we go to therapy and like heal ourselves before having children. That way we don't pass on anything like that to them.
And in a similar fashion, I like to define it as the 3 A's. So the first A is having awareness. So what have we encountered? What have our parents and our family, what have they been through? So we have awareness of what we need to work on. And then the second A will be accountability. So now we're not saying that we caused the trauma or these negative experiences, but we're saying, hey, I'm going to be accountable for the healing that I want to happen. And then the last one will be action. And now I'm taking action, whether that's through community support, through therapy support, through journaling, whatever that action needs to look like for you. Because now you don't just want to say, okay, I'm aware of it, but I'm going to take some action and do something about it.
Okay, I like that. The 3 A's. All right. Yep. Thank you. Somebody dropped it. Awareness, accountability, and action. That is really good. So I saw some people in the chat mentioning some ways that they are healing. So that's actually one of my questions for you all. What are some ways that you have started the healing process?
I've definitely I started going to therapy. That's been a really big help, and I'm lucky enough to have access. And I'm gonna just like do a little PR for a second. AAKOMA actually has a program where people of color from ages 12 to 30 can get up to 5 free sessions of therapy. All they need to do is go to AAKOMA.com, and there's a link, but I'm forgetting it right now. Therapy has been a really good way to help me, remember and to like take accountability for like the things that I've done in my life, you know, my actions, and you know, to just help me move forward with all the things that's going on in the world and my own little bubble.
Yeah, and I would say therapy, and also talking with other men about what I'm going through. Like, you know, as men, a lot of times we don't like to open up about what we're feeling. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Purvis, he says you can't heal what you don't reveal. So just talking about what we're going through and general conversation for each other is so important. So now if I'm going through something, if I've had a bad day or I had a negative experience with somebody or in the world, I can unpack that with somebody and know that it's going to be confidential and I'm not being judged. My manhood is not being threatened. Having those safe spaces really lets us as men, quote unquote, let our hair down and just be human and not always have to have a strong, tough mentality.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would like to add that I fully agree. I hope that my brothers find a place like that. I personally have started the healing process by talking to my siblings and my parents, specifically my older siblings, mostly kind of just about the way we grew up and areas and things that might have been around us, and how we need to not let that, how we can try to stop that from affecting us moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That that was really great. A great way to end it for me to kind of circle back to some comments that were made. Someone in the chat said sometimes we feel like we owe it to our parents to suck it up because we didn't have it as hard as them. Someone else said I would have loved to have grown up embracing my Blackness, but coming from an immigrant family, the stereotypes and white supremacy was too deeply ingrained. Do you all have anything that you want to add on to that?
I definitely not wanting to disappoint your parents because they had it harder. Like that's been a very prevalent theme with throughout my life. And I mean, it's not only been freeing, but it's been like a relief to like realize that like what your parents went through does not negate what you went through. And that's what's really, really important, is prioritizing yourself and not dismissing what you've experienced and what's hurting you right now than what's happened to the past to somebody else.
That was so well said. I just got goosebumps. Wow. Awesome. Awesome. We had another question in the chat. It says, what have you all found to be effective to get our youth to access therapy and other resources if the parents or guardians are having restraints?
Well, I found that I'll say as a therapist, having family sessions can be really helpful because now it's not, you're not saying, okay, this therapy is for you or it's for the child or the teen, but it's for everybody. And now we get a chance to sit back and really normalize the therapy and therapeutic process without feeling like I have something going on and I need help. But we all can benefit from talking to somebody. And then a good therapist can say, you know what? Hey, Jason, I hear what you're saying. I think it may be good for you to have your own session. So you don't have to be interrupted by your mom or over talked by your dad. And in those situations, you know, the parents like, yeah, this is what we wanted. And the child may be like, you know what? I like that because I got some stuff to talk about that I don't want them all up in my business about. So it's really good to have a family session, and then that can be the first time to really open the door for other people to have their own unique individual sessions.
That's a really great answer. And thank you for your work as a therapist. We need individuals like you. I see someone that commented, yes, get rid of the stigma. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You, like in our community, you tell your parent, you're like, oh, I have anxiety or I might be depressed. I know that I have seen some people say that their parents are like, oh, go pray, go listen to a song. Like, ain't nothing wrong with you. You're not depressed. And it's like, no, but we really are. We really do need to unpack these things. So I love that the stigma around going to therapists and getting that help and seeking counseling that is being removed. I really do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Another question. We have a question for AAKOMA. Will AAKOMA help people find therapists after the sessions?
Most definitely. Yeah, a coma is not going to just open up the wound and leave you hanging. They'll find a way to get you connected either through a warm handoff
Mm-hmm.
or find a way to continuously support you.
Awesome. 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 So I have another question. I love questions like this. So, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self?
This is so
It's
hard. I would tell my younger self that I would tell my younger self and all young people just like in school to always try to find at least one adult you can talk to, because even it's just I feel like you just always need someone outside of your family you can talk to, because you aren't going to go home and see them, and they aren't at home like watching you.
I'll, did you want to jump in, Amira?
Oh, I can. I'd probably say find your people. Growing up with like mostly white friends, or like friends with like really straight hair, like with specifically my hair, like it was a really long road to get to where I am now and be like okay with who I am, and that also transcends into my blackness. Finding your people is really, really important to helping know a part of who you are, and your friends can be a really good resource. They keep you grounded. They help you just like be you to your fullest extent, and it's super important and something I wish I knew.
In addition to finding your people, I would say find yourself. And also, not just find yourself, but be yourself. A lot of times we know who we are, but because of what our parents or what our friends are telling us, we don't let ourselves just be our unique, awesome selves. And that's what I would encourage my younger self. Just start being me from even as early as I can remember.
Y'all are just killing it tonight. These are some great answers. Great answers. The chat is agreeing. So while I ask this next question, I'm going to open up the floor to any of our viewers. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat below, and we'll go ahead and ask our panelists. So the next question I have is, because while we're talking about community, how have you felt supported by the people in your family, your friends, your community, just the people within your network? How have you felt supported?
I definitely feel supported when I like I'm ever just talking to my friends, and I'll just like mention something like that's kind of like really niche to the Black community, and they'll just be like, yeah, that happens all the time. Like it's incredibly validating, and that validation, like, well, although it's not like the most important thing to like knowing your truth, it's very nice to have, and it's really, really just motivating to like to like know that you are important and that other people relate to you and that you're not alone ultimately.
Yeah. My friends, they've shown up in the chat. I see Tiffany. We had a conversation a while back about corporate trauma, and I felt really supported by what she was saying, validating my feelings and me validating her. Because a lot of times what we experience in the workplace, it looks like corporate trauma, but it's a form of generational trauma too, because we're feeling like we have to do it all. We have to be the best because, again, that's what we've been told. So there's a lot of pressure put on us to perform, and we start feeling it, and we feel like we can't say, I don't know, or how do I ask for help without thinking that something's wrong with me. But in actuality, nobody knows everything. So my friends have supported me in a lot of ways. I appreciate y'all.
My friends, I just love meeting people who I feel like have the same experiences, because it's like, I don't know, a lot of the time I feel like it's just easier to kind of tell yourself, oh, you're being dramatic. But then when you meet other people who have experienced the same things and feel the same way about it, it's like they'll just tell you, you're not being dramatic. And it feels really good to just have people validate your feelings.
Yeah.
And I feel the people around me, my friends, my community, they do that a lot.
Yes, that was great. I'm with you. I'm known as the dramatic one. I tell people all the time I'm very emotional, and I know that there are times where I'll be tripping. So I call my friends in a heartbeat, like, is it just me, or do you feel this way also? So when they validate my feelings and let me know that I am not alone, that is a really, really good thing. Like you said, you see some of your friends on here tonight supporting you. I see some of mine too. Shout out to y'all. Y'all know who y'all are. But that corporate trauma, oh my gosh, you got them stirred up in the chat talking about that. That really is so real, like not being able to just go in and like you said, ask questions because you just don't want to feel less than. And I'm also thankful for my team that I have here at Our Minds Matter. I do not have to worry about that here. So shout out to the team at Our Minds Matter as well. I love y'all dearly. We have two questions here in our questions and answer portion. So the first question is, how can parents / caregivers talk to Black youth about trauma without scaring
them? I think when they come up to you with questions, I feel like them asking questions back on what it means to them is a really good way to like open the discussion, because it should never just be the parent just telling a child about something. It should be an open discussion with questions on both sides, and like just a real I've used this word a lot, but discussion, rather than just telling.
I would hope that when Black parents are approaching their youth about this, they ask them about their experiences, because then I think you kind of just start off meeting at a common ground, and then that would just be the easiest way to not scare them.
Yeah, having common ground is key. And I think parents can just have a conversation about what they've been through. A lot of times we don't know, or we didn't know what our parents experienced. So they're parenting us and telling us what not to do, or we want you to avoid this. But sometimes it's okay to give us a little backstory about what you've experienced too. So then we can be curious and say, oh, wow, how did you handle that? So now it's not like, hey, don't do this and don't ask me why, just do as I say. But I can actually listen. And then as we, as the parents are opening up and telling that story, we'll feel like, okay, you know what? If something does happen to me, I'm more prone to talk to you about it now because you shared with me what happened to you.
them?
So you're still the parent. I still respect you, but now I'm more curious and I'm even more tuned in because you said, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable and let you know that I was once in your position and this is how I handled it. And this is how I wouldn't want to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it definitely builds the trust for sure.
Yes, I agree on the part about building the trust, because I'm the type of person I didn't like growing up when I'm just being told to do something because I'm so curious. I need to know the why. So when you explain to me why, it like you said, it causes me to be more in tune and I'm able to understand more. And it's not like, oh, I'm just telling you because I said so or just because, but there's actually, like they like to say, a method behind the madness. So I definitely appreciate that perspective as well. We have another question. Is there any research in racial trauma and how it impacts Black young people?
AAKOMA recently did a study. It wasn't specific to Black youth, but it was all the people of color in the country, and it basically summarizes a lot of the data about like how the youth are feeling now. It's not very specific about generational trauma, but it's a really good way to see the effects of the different experiences that these different groups have gone through. And it's a nice little summary. You can find it on the akomaproject.com or .org. I forgot. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have another question. What tips do you have for children who have parents who do not acknowledge the fact that their trauma affects their parenting?
Mm.
I would say like find the people who you can relate to or a different adult in your life. Like maybe you don't have your parent that will understand, but maybe you'll have like an older cousin or like a mentor in your life. Like those people are really to like helping you discuss things with an adult that maybe you don't want to talk about to your parents.
Yeah. Or even like older siblings, um, or maybe just like talking to like if you can find the like one adult in school I was talking about earlier, maybe just try to see if you can like have a sit down with them, and maybe just having like another adult there will like help them.
Yeah. You guys both dropped some great answers. I will add that talk to your parents about how you would want them to talk to you about these things, because sometimes as kids we can say, look, I'm not listening to you when you do this, this, and that, and then the parents may kind of buck back or say, look, I'm the parent. But if the child can model or say, can we talk about it in this way, or this is how I would receive it better. And then secondly, don't personalize it and think that how they're approaching you or how they're parenting you, that it's your fault or that you're the problem. Make sure that you do have that trusted person who is an adult, or if you're in therapy, talk to your therapist about this, but don't make it seem like this is just your fault. That's your parent, and your parent has been through a lot of things that you will probably never, ever know about.
That is so true. Wow. So true. As a person who we're all somebody's child, but like I'm still my mom's baby. But like we don't give our parents enough grace at times. I will say there are times because like I said, I have an immigrant Jamaican mother. I don't know half of the things that she has gone through. And my mother is the type that, because of her generational trauma, she's not going to show it. She's not going to tell me. She's always going to show up. She is always going to give me that tough love, and she's going to keep it pushing. And that is just how my mother is. And like you said, we have to keep in mind that we talk to them in a certain way where they can also be receptive to the information as well. That's a really important thing that you said there. So thank you. Thank you for that. We have an interesting question here. What if the adults around haven't even acknowledged their own trauma? So I guess it's like, how are you supposed to aid me with my trauma if you haven't accepted your own? How would we kind of go about navigating that?
I would say, ask yourself, how is my parents' trauma impacting me? Because if you're talking to your therapist about all the stuff that your parents are doing or not doing, that is great to get it out, but you really want to put the focus back on you and ask yourself, how is this impacting me, and what is it that I can control? And then lastly,
Mm,
how can I keep myself emotionally safe? So does that mean that I don't share certain things with my parents, or does that mean I set a different boundary with my parent? But I really would turn that question into, how is them not addressing their trauma, how is it showing up and impacting me?
thank you. Thank you. I saw a comment that said, always remember your healing comes first, and we can't make anyone come to realizations about their trauma. That comment makes me think about, someone shared this analogy the other day and I can't remember, but they were saying how it's like the airplane when they talk about the oxygen mask. When it comes down, you have to put your own mask on first before you put on anyone else's. So that's what comes to mind for me. Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. Do we have any other questions while we wait and see? I have another one for you all because I feel like we've been talking about a lot of heavy stuff, which, while it's good and needed, we can always have a little bit of joy. So, what is something that has sparked joy for you?
I think something for me, it's just being my authentic self, really. Like, I recently joined my school's theater program, and I've literally never been happier. Like, being who you are is so freeing. And once you're able to do that, it's just a type of joy you can't explain to other people. Once you know, and it's something you just can't not go back to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've been skating lately. I didn't go this past weekend, but with another AAKOMA subject matter expert, me and Dr. Shanita, we get out there and, we're not like flipping and doing all the spins, but it's just fun. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to be careful so we can get back to work. But it is super fun just to get out there, let our hair down, and have some fun.
That's a good answer. I was about to ask you, are you like them in
Uh,
ATL? They be skating backwards and doing all those tricks. Like, I always wish I could skate that well. I am not on that level. Awesome. Iman.
Something that brings me joy is definitely hanging out with my friends. Oh, wait, actually, I really like planning parties. And on Saturday, actually, I threw a little like Valentine's Day thing for a lot of my friends, and it was cool having. I got to.
That's a great answer. Love that for you. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I sometimes I don't know if friends realize how important they really are. I saw a post on Instagram one day, and I can't quote it word for word, but it was something along the lines of a night out with my friends reminds me that life is worth living. And that's so powerful. And because you really could be in those moments where you just want to be alone, you don't feel like being bothered with the troubles of the world, but then your friends come around and they just remind you, and they bring you so much joy. That is really powerful. I love that you have that community around you, and you have your little gallons time. That is so nice. We have another question that is specifically for you, Jason. It says, as you said in the opening, I'm the generation that was told to always get a bag and receipt. How do we not pass that on to our kids?
Oh, talk about it. Yep, great question. But really, just share that same story. Hey, when I was growing up, my mom or my dad told me to do X, Y, Z, and think about how you want to parent your kids, but just really sharing that story and then sharing the why and the values behind it over and over again, because it's going to take more than just one time.
Mm-hmm.
But being transparent, that's going to help us break a lot of these generational trauma cycles, because we talk about it a lot. But I want us to talk more about the actual action too, which is sharing what we've been through, having conversations like this, and revealing, and not just keeping it all to ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. I see two more questions in the chat that are kind of aligned, so I'm going to kind of combine them. So it was asking, what would a healed world look like? But then the second question is, what is one racial trauma that you would like all of us to overcome to kind of help heal the next generation? So we can all go around and answer this, and then we'll get ready to wrap up.
Which one first?
Well, either or. No preference. Let's start with what would a healed world look like? Yeah.
A healed world, I feel like, would be like an understanding one. It's one where we recognize the differences in each other's experiences and morals, and we can come to a consensus and be able to work through the challenges that come, not by like fighting, but through talking.
I would say a healed world looks like being emotionally safe, being safe to be yourself, and being safe with the relationships that you have.
I agree. I think a healed world is kind of just everybody being free to be themselves and talk about what they're going through without just any kind of fear. And then I think one racial trauma I would really like for everyone to unlearn is kind of like how I said earlier about just like not constantly worrying about how you're presenting yourself, because that can be very tiring. Just like having to always make sure that you're smiling, or you're like, I feel like sometimes I'm literally being uncomfortably nice. Like I'm nice to the point where I'm making people uncomfortable just because I'm just so worried about being seen as like the angry girl.
The racial trauma that comes to mind for me would be our relationship with the police. I think if we could heal that, that would be excellent. Really forming more of a unification between us, because right now what we're seeing is growing further and further apart, and that tension is starting to rise to an unhealthy level.
Thank you.
I think the racial trauma that I would want healed is probably the like strong Black woman archetype or the strong Black man. I feel like it takes so much energy to like rely solely on yourself and not rely on other people and not let other people see who you are like when you're down, because it's all a facade. And when you put yourself on a, well, you don't put yourself on a pedestal, but when you let other people put you on a pedestal and you mess up one time, that could be like world shattering for you. And making a mistake should not be world shattering. That's not ideal, and it's very unhealthy.
These are
Yeah.
some great answers.
Powerful.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this reminds me of, I saw a lot of people in the chat earlier talking about academic trauma. Can we talk about academic trauma?
Real quickly, yes, yes, please.
Okay, so for me personally, up until my freshman year of high school, I lived in a majority Black area and I went to a majority Black school. And I was always like the top of my class, straight A's, like I just always felt the need to be the best of the best, and I was the best of the best. And then I switched schools. I moved to my white suburb, and I go to my white suburban school, and I'm barely getting C's. I am scraping by. And that took a while for me to get over because I was so used to being the best of the best. And even like with my parents, it was just, what do you mean you can't even get a C?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of us have been there.
Yeah,
A lot
definitely
of us.
I definitely see like Black students specifically putting so much pressure on themselves in our school, because our school is incredibly competitive, even though it's like a public school. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like students are taking classes they know they can't handle, but they need it for like and their applications. And it's like absolutely ridiculous at this point. And it's something we definitely need to work on as a community and as society as a whole.
I agree. Thank you so much for touching on that. That was really great. I just want to take the time out to thank our panelists. You all were amazing. We had some deep discussion tonight. Thank you so much for your openness. Thank you for being vulnerable and just being candid and sharing your stories. I also have to shout out our viewers. Y'all were active in the chat. Y'all asked some great questions, kept our panelists on their toes. Y'all really, y'all really played a major part in this discussion. I'm really thankful. I'm so happy for the amazing work that you're doing, Jason, Amira, Iman. You all should be extremely proud of yourselves. Thank you so much for having this discussion around healing generational trauma. As I said when I first started out, that song that I was playing, Patience, it's going to take some time, but we're going to get to a day where things are going to be brighter. It says that the last shall be first. So we have a lot of work to do, but conversations like this are playing a major role in addressing these issues. So again, I thank you. We also want to place emphasis on the fact that our ancestors have gifted us with abundance, and trauma is just one part of the whole package that is being handed down. So healing from generational trauma, it is possible. And while it may look differently for each one of us, we hope that you all remember that you do not have to go through this alone. So again, I thank you so much from the Our Minds Matter team. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Amira. Thank you, Iman. Thank you to everyone that joined the chat tonight and took the time out to be a part of this discussion. And also, I just want to leave you with a quick tip to text MIND to 741-741 for 24/7 support from Crisis Text Line. Again, thank you so much. For more mental health resources, please also check out our website, ourmindsmatter.org, as well as AAKOMAproject.org. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care. Signing off now. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it so much.